Hey guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow, and I am back with an all-new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read on the actor Will Smith and his wife Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, we are not only going to be exploring the relational dynamic between the two of these, but we're also going to be looking into the energetic blueprint of Will Smith himself, as well as the circumstances that led to his meteoric rise to success in the Hollywood industry, and the circumstances that led to the slap that happened on live TV at the Academy Awards. So if that sounds good, please stick around, and if not, I will catch you at another video. Now, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently today, because the way in which I typically do a video where we're exploring the relational dynamic between a couple is I would typically first look into the energetic blueprint of both parties, and then we would look into the relational dynamic between the two of them. However, we're actually going to be doing things in reverse. I'm first going to be laying the groundwork into the relational dynamic of Will and Jada. Then I'm going to be exploring his own internal energetic blueprint, as well as what had led to his rise into the success in Hollywood, because it actually all comes together, but only once we understand the relational dynamic between the two of them will what had happened to him prior actually provide the substance in understanding the dynamic between the two of them. So it's going to be a really wild video. A lot of very interesting information had come in, and I'm very excited to share it with you guys. So before we get into the channeled information, we're first going to be exploring some three-dimensional information on Will and Jada. So here we go. This is information that was acquired off of their Wikipedia page. However, it is not the full entirety of the information. I literally just do like the first paragraph on them. That's it. So it's by no means the full breadth and scope of what's on their wiki page, but that's what we have the internet for, not what you have an energy reader for. So according to Will Smith's Wikipedia page, Will Smith is an American actor, rapper, and film producer. He has received multiple awards, including an Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award, a BAFTA Award, and 4 Grammy Awards. As of 2024, his films have grossed over $9.3 billion with a B, dollars globally, making him one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. As of 2023, his estimated net worth is $350 million. Don't worry, we are going to be exploring why he is such a bankable star, and if it is perhaps because he is in the club, but that comes later. Now, Jada Pinkett Smith is an American actress, singer, and talk show host. She is co-host of the Facebook Watch talk show Red Table Talk, for which she has received a Daytime Emmy. Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in 2021. She has an estimated net worth of $50 million. Certainly nothing to sneeze at. Now, Will and Jada met in 1994, and they were married in 1997. Now, notably, these two also have 2 children that are both multimillionaires in their own right. Jaden Smith, which was born in 1998, made his film debut in 2006 at just the tender age of 8 years old. Jaden has an estimated net worth of $8 million. His younger sister, Willow, started acting at 7 in the film I Am Legend alongside her father. Willow has an estimated net worth of $6 million. Very notable, one could say. We're going to be exploring all this and so much more. So let's get into the channeled information of the relational dynamic between Will and Jada. And this is what was shown to me. Will Smith is sad. If he was honest with himself, he'd admit that he has been sad for a long time. Years, maybe. But he cannot be honest with himself because there is no room in his house, in his life, in his anything, for his own needs and his own honesty because of Jada and all her shit and her truth and her needs and her. She takes up so much space, so much goddamned space, and every day he finds himself retracting and becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's his goddamned house that he acquired with his own goddamned money and his own success. And did Jada even once say thank you? Nope. She acted like she was entitled, like it was a given, and he'd do this and he would do it for her. Like anything and everything he does is all for her and no one else and nothing else. And in a lot of ways, he concedes she's right. She's got him. She has got such a hold on him. Everything he in fact does is for her. But it's not because she's relentless, even though she is. It's not because she can be stubborn, even though she is. It's not because she's obstinate, even though she is. Or because she is unyielding, even though she most definitely is. But it's because she's got him. Jada can look at Will, just look at him, and she can reduce him to rubble. She knows him better than anyone, and sometimes to him, it feels as if she knows him better than he knows himself. And she loves that. And so she knows exactly what to say and exactly what to do to have him groveling for her and her affection once again. And he hates that part of himself, the part that is so desperate for her that he'll do anything, including look the other way with her affairs. Affairs, plural, not singular, not affairs. Appear on her show and make a goddamned fool of himself and slap Chris on TV on the night that was supposed to be his night because he was going to win his first Oscar. And somehow she managed to even make that night all about her. She is so good at it, and he doesn't even know how she does it. She's like a virus that affects the mind, and she owns him utterly and completely. And he hates that, but he also loves that because with her, he's home. Now, he also shared with me that when he was younger, he was reckless and feckless. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's the word that came in. Reckless and feckless, and was just a kid having fun with a little bit of a career and the success that he had. And because he was young and he was, on his way up and he had a little bit of success, he got a lot of leeway because of it. Like a lot. Really, he says, somebody needed to sit him down and tell him, son, You are being reckless and with your actions and the hearts of young women. Because he was. But again, young, successful-ish, and having fun. And then Jada came along. And suddenly, his life orbited around her. Because she was the only one that could set him straight. She was the only one that could get through to him and make him listen. And her voice drowned out all the other noise around him. It drowned out the irreverence, the self-doubt that he had, the partying. There was just her. And for the first time in his life, he felt anchored to someone and felt he could be something. And it was intoxicating, the way she could make him feel like he was the most important and powerful person in the world. And it made him feel that he could do anything and he could be anyone. And it was like a drug to him. She was like a drug to him. And the way she could make him feel was more potent than any drug. And the come down and the crash did happen, but not yet. Not until she had him well and truly hooked. And again, at this time, if he could be honest with himself, he was well and truly fucked as well. Because he had tied so much of himself to her and the hopes and the dreams of their future life together that he had a hard time seeing where he ended and she began. So there's some codependency here. Just by his own admissions, he didn't know where he ended and she began. It's codependency. And they were hopelessly tied together. And it wasn't even the money that scared him if he were to lose her and if they were to split up and if he had to pay her out in a divorce. What actually scared him about getting divorced and about losing her is the parts of himself that are so deeply rooted and connected to her that they actually would belong to her outright and they would cease belonging to him at all if she left. So he is acknowledging that if she ever left him, she would leave with fundamental parts of himself that he has tied up and connected to her because she has anchored him. And still, even now today, he doesn't know where he ends and she begins because she is larger than life to him. She looms. Seriously, for a short little bitch, these are his words, not mine. I use a notebook for a reason. And according to him, for a short little bitch, she looms. Her energy looms and towers over him. And he thinks that's what he always liked about her. She set him on the straight and narrow. She made him grow up, take his life and his career more seriously, and she made him into a man. The man he never thought he could be until she was at his side. And now she engulfs him utterly and completely. He is the A-lister, but somehow she is the one that is larger than life, at least to him. So it's at this time I felt like I got a pretty good handle on the way that Will feels about Jada and why he feels tied and connected to her, and despite everything that may have come out recently, why he would never leave her. And it's not because of the money, and it's not because of a potential, really pricey divorce. It's because he feels like fundamental parts of himself are deeply rooted and tied up into her, that if this partnership were to ever end, she would be leaving with fundamental parts of himself, because he doesn't know where he ends and she begins. So I was like, okay, I got a good handle on Will. Let's turn our attention over to Jada and see what Jada wanted to share. And this is what she had said. So first and foremost, as soon as I had turned my attention over to her to see how she's reacting or receiving everything that Will had shared, she just smiled at me, but she didn't say anything right away. And then she's kind of like sitting there. She's assessing me. I think she was kind of trying to determine, like, what did she want to say? What did she want to share? Where did she want to go with all of this? And then after maybe about a minute of kind of like assessing me, where I just allow myself to be assessed, she starts sharing. And this is what she says. She tells me it's true. Will would not have reached his potential without her. Her guidance, her counsel, because she instinctively knew which roles were the best for him. Which ones would make his star power grow? His success then is equal part hers. This is her self-reporting. Because even though he was the actor, the roles were her choosing, according to Jada. Sometimes with her encouragement. Or maybe it was even her outright withholding love and affection from him to get him back on track when he deviated. But according to Jada, these two are the living embodiment of behind every successful man is his wife. Except she's not behind him. Oh, no, she is not behind him. That is far too demeaning for how she has contributed to his success. And because his success is her success, she allows herself and her needs to be front and center. Sometimes, at least. Okay. Most of the time, in fact. Mostly all of the time. But it's also because she's given him a nice life with kids and success. So really, Will, he needs to stop making a fuss about all of this, about how she is front and center in his life, because his success is her success. So stop making a fuss, Will. Because of her, he has achieved more than he ever would have achieved on his own. So really, Will, stop making a fuss. Not me saying this, this is Jada. Because their energy, both of them are kind of like lingering around me. So she's saying it to me, but as she's saying it to me, she's saying it to me knowing that he's going to hear it. So it's kind of like playing broken telephone, but it's not a broken telephone. It's like you're sitting in the same room, you're not whispering in anybody's ear. It's like I'm having a conversation with somebody, but I'm having it knowing you're going to full well hear it. And she also said he must stop making this fuss and stop carrying on like the overgrown child he sometimes still is. Jada says he needed to grow up. He was too wild, too reckless, and he needed a strong woman to rein him in and show him the way. And he is lucky it was her. Because a wild man like Will in the wrong hands could have been catastrophic. And has he ever thanked her for saving him from himself? Of course not. And that's how Jada knows she still has work to do. Because until she could snap her fingers at him and get him to yield to her like a well-trained dog, she still has work to do on him. So she's now directing to me and she says, "Move along, girl. I've taken too much of their time already." And even though Will pleads with me, with his eyes, for me to stay and to act as a buffer between the two of them, it's Jada who snaps her fingers at him, gives him a look of pure doom. And yes, like a well-trained dog, he does trail off after her. Now that was the relational dynamic of what had come through with Will and Jada. And I channeled that back on March 5th. And today is, I want to say maybe like March 28th, March 27th, something on about there. So I had channeled their relational dynamic a couple of weeks ago. And then last night, while I was sitting down to look into the three-dimensional information on them from the Wiki pages, I felt called to look into Will's energy again. Because he was pleading for me to stick around and stay as the buffer. And I was like, I actually wonder if that's in fact because he has more that he wanted to share with me. Boy, did Will have a lot more that he wanted to share with me. And this is the information that had come in last night, which is in fact going to provide a lot further and additional context in understanding the dynamic between the two of them. But it comes at the end of the energy read that I had done on Will himself. So here we go. This is the additional information that was channeled last night. And this is on Will's energy alone. Will had shared with me he could be brash and a little wild and a little reckless. And yes, he chased tail like a dog in pursuit of a bitch in heat. Again, these are his words, not my own. He loved the attention of the ladies because they smelled good and they had soft skin. But there was also a side of him that was unyet explored. The side of him that kept running away. What did I write here? One second. The side he kept running away from by running to the ladies. Because running after ladies was in fact a really good cover to the fact that he was secretly attracted to males as well. But he was attracted to them for totally different reasons. So whereas women were soft and they made him feel safe, the men got him riled up and got him tapped into his own masculinity. And that sometimes felt very opposite of the way that he felt around women. So whereas being around women and their softness made him feel safe, when he was around men and he was feeling the attraction to them, but it was attraction that he had not yet explored or given into, that made him feel riled up, and that sometimes made him feel out of control. And he didn't like feeling out of control. Being around men, he felt powerful and very out of control. He felt lustful, and like all that testosterone and all their muscles and hard angles, they got to him. Yes, he liked the way women smelled, but he loved the way men smelled. The sweat after working out was intoxicating to him. So yeah, he had it bad, but he wasn't admitting that to anyone, least of all himself, least of all back then. So chase and tail was a great cover. But sometimes the things we most try to suppress, they end up clinging to us like our shadow. And it's because they are, in fact, our shadow. It's our shadow self, or it's the parts of ourselves that we think are most unlovable. So his biggest insecurity was embracing his suppressed homosexual tendencies. But wouldn't it be something if he could in fact embrace it? And by embracing it, it would also lead to his success in the industry. Wouldn't that be something? I wonder how this all came to pass. Don't worry, I share it. Because this skinny, reckless kid that chased tail did in fact happen to be very interested in acting as well. And he had a look about him. Even back then, when he was, a rapper and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, before he was the most bankable star in Hollywood that he is today, he had a look about him. But it wasn't just his looks. It's also his energy. Because Will Smith has a very soft, sweet, and demure energy, slapping somebody on live TV aside. So he does have actually a soft and demure energy until he doesn't. Because just as chasing girls was a cover for his other desires, the softness that he exhibited was a cover for what also lurked underneath, which was the power of a lion and the loyalty of one too. So this is where I'm actually going to pause and I'm going to say, the way in which Will's energy comes in, or had come into me at this time before he was as successful as he is today, was energetically severed. Because he had parts of himself that he was suppressing and he was not willing to accept and embrace and bring to the fore. So therefore, because of it, he was energetically fractured. And a lot of that does have to do with like our so-called shadow self. So our shadow self, again, as I had mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, is there's parts of ourself that we deem to be unlovable. And therefore, because we deem them to be unlovable, whether in fact they are or they aren't, it's like our self-reporting about certain parts of ourself. Because we self-report or self-identify that certain parts of ourself are unlovable, we will in fact suppress them. And by suppressing them, we are severing our own energy because we are living an unintegrated life. So a person who does this won't necessarily be able to rise to the full potential of their power and their character and their nature because they are energetically severed. But they're energetically severed because of the way in which they self-identify their shadow side, which they deem to be unlovable. So Will kind of had back then like an affable, friendly, good guy who just happened to have a weakness for women. That was, if you will, him living in his disempowered state. But as I had shared with you, in the Hollywood industry, for the gatekeepers to welcome one in, everything is transactional. And they are looking at an individual in determining what are they going to pay to play? What is their entry into the club? And they're looking at him. And just like as an energy reader, I can see that back at that time, he was living fractured, energetically fractured, and in a disempowered state. They could see the same as him. Because one of the pay to play, one of the currencies of gaining entry into the club is energy. And they're looking at him and he's energetically fractured. And they're saying, okay, he loves women. It's a fucking cover. He's affable, he's friendly, he's likable, he's a aw shucks kind of funny kind of a guy. But they could see underneath, if they could get him to integrate all parts of a whole into himself, they would be unleashing the lion within. And then the lion within is loyal. And if they could unlock his power, they would then be transferring his loyalty onto the club. So if that loyalty and that power of a lion could be tapped into and released, well then, that was something that could really be something. But they weren't quite sure yet what kind of something that could be. But they could see the raw potential roiling off of him. So part of his entry into the club was in fact a way of releasing the lion within Will. And how did they do that? By stripping him bare. Sometimes even literally. And they had done this on more than one occasion. So I was shown 2 distinct occasions in which he was literally stripped naked. The first one was he was in a room with, I would say, at least 3 different people, and they were recording this. They stripped him completely naked. And this is before he bulked up and he became the strong leading male that he I would say is more now. This is like back early on. So he's still like a skinny little shit. So he's standing there, his hands are covering his, his private parts, and they just stripped him fucking bare. And they're like, look in the fucking mirror. Do you like what you see? So they were trying to first break him down. Break him, so once he was broken, they could build him back up again. By literally stripping him naked and telling him to look in the mirror and asking him if he liked what he saw. And did he always want to be this skinny little shit? They literally had to break him down. And they would look at his physical appearance and they would break every single part of it. Now, the second occurrence in which I had seen where he was literally stripped bare, and he's not the only person this has happened to. In the next AMA, I actually saw this happening to another celebrity as well. We'll discuss it when we get there. So he's not the only one that they actually do this to. But what had they done in the second occurrence where they literally had stripped him bare? They took him to the woods. They stripped him naked at dusk. And they told him to make his way back to them. But it was without any food, any shelter, or any clothing at all. They only gave him water. So he's standing there, and it's kind of that, like that time of day where you can't quite tell if it's sunrise or sunset? It was that time of day. So it was still light enough that he could see. And he's stripped down in the woods, and he's standing there, and even though it was the time of day where, you can't necessarily know if it's going into morning or going into night, he knew it was going into night. So he's rapidly looking around, trying to get a lay of the land, to see as much as he could see while he still had enough daylight to absorb all of that and to bring that in. And he's freaking the fuck out. But he doesn't want to show them that he's freaking the fuck out. And he's standing there, he's been stripped bare, and he's starting to shake. Part of it was cold. Part of it was the shock. It was even if it was kind of even a little bit like a traumatic experience for him. And his eyes are just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just trying to take in as much as he can because he knows it's going to get dark soon. Then he's standing and he's turning around and he's looking around. They all get into the fucking car and they drive off. And they leave him naked in the woods with no food, no shelter, no clothing, just water. And told he has to make his way back to them. Imagine how terrifying this must have been. He was floored. Excuse me. But he did not cry until he was left alone. And then once they had driven off, he cried for a good 30 minutes, like full on, freak the fuck out crying, like down on the floor. His hands, like he curled himself up into a ball. His hands were over his head and he was just full on bawling. He had no idea what the fuck was even like happening. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know he was gonna fucking like cross over. He was freaking out. He was completely floored. So he cried for a good 30 minutes. Then he wiped his eyes. He stood up. He started walking, all while talking to himself to keep himself motivated. So one could in fact say, because here's the thing. I'm sure there are some people that if they were put in this circumstance, might in fact sit down and be like, just shut down, right? Like they might literally freeze and just shut down and not do anything. By stripping him completely bare and leaving him to be on his own and to be completely self-sufficient and self-reliant and to get himself out of this, they did in fact, rather traumatically, but they did in fact break him to release the lion inside of himself. Because after he had that good cry, he stood up and he started to self-motivate himself. And he was saying to himself, get the fuck up, man. You can do this. Put one fucking foot in front of the other. You got this. He was self-motivating himself. Now, what he did not know while he was walking, trying to find his way back to them, is that he was on private property. Not like this is private property that they had trespassed onto, and if he was discovered, they were going to call the police and he was going to get arrested, and oh my fucking God, no. He was on private property, in a state in which they actually routinely do these things. Because if I've seen it more than once, it means it's happening to other people as well. It's just maybe not an energy of a person that I have, looked into, but it's happening more than one time. So they're first kind of dropped into this area of heavy condensation of trees. And then there's a clearing, and then there's more trees. And then there's some, hills or mountains, not like tall mountains, not like snow-capped mountains, but there's like some hills on one direction, but not the other direction. So ostensibly, if somebody kind of sees the hills, they're thinking, if I'm going to get the fuck out of here, it's probably not going to be over the hills. It's going to be kind of like walking through the trees to the clearing. So that was the path that he had walked on. Again, not knowing that this was a private property where he was not going to wander into bears or he was not going to be discovered and the police were going to be called. But he was in fact very safe. But he didn't know these things because that wasn't the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise was to strip him bare so the lion within could be released. The point was to save himself, but for him to do it on his own and to come out of the exercise whole and in one piece and feeling more confident. Because it wasn't living in an energetically disempowered state, oh, the soft, funny, affable guy. No. It was, you want to survive? Get the fuck up and survive. But the only way to do it was to break him So the parts of himself that had been so deeply suppressed would have no choice but to come to the fore. And it worked. What was shown to me is that he had showed up at a house on the property at dawn. It was still a touch dark out, but it was getting to that point now where you're getting into the light, where you're, again, not sure if you're going into daytime or you're going into nighttime. So he had been on his own, wandering in the darkness for a full, let's say, 12 hours. Naked, alone, no shelter, just water, not knowing what was going to happen to him, freaked the fuck out essentially. But it had worked because he had showed up at the property at dawn, scratched the fuck up, bruised as fuck, bleeding, dirty, shaking from the cold, shaking from the fear. But when he got to the house and the door was open and he had seen those that had dropped him off in the middle of nowhere, he cried even harder. He was walking up like a back porch and they open up, he sees the house, right? And the lights are on. All the lights are on. So he's and he sees the car that he was dropped off in next to the house. So he knows he found what he was supposed to find. So he's walking up the back porch, shaking. And they open up the door to let him in. And he falls down on his knees on the back porch and he loses it all over again. And he's just crying. Cried harder. After he had concluded crying, he had stood up. He was welcomed into the kitchen and they told him to sit, which he did. Again, I remind you, he was bruised up, he was scratched up, he was dirty, he was bleeding, he was naked. And he was told to sit down in that current condition and in that current state at the table. And they fed him a shit ton of food. And all the while, he's almost, if you will, like on autopilot. He's just sitting there, almost not even like looking at the food that was put onto his plate. There's no level of discernment. He's just like on autopilot, putting it into his mouth, feeding himself until his hunger is satiated. Then he drinks some water. He's still fucking shaking. He's still fucking dirty. He's completely like, I'm telling you, he was fucking traumatized. And then they had said there was a bathroom for him and a bed for him. And he went, he showered. While he was in the shower, he cried some more. And then he cried some more. They literally broke him, guys. I really cannot like overstate this enough. They did in fact break him. So he was just crying. He cleans himself up. He goes into the bedroom and he sleeps almost for like a complete day. He was a wreck. And he hardly had time to process all that had been done to him and all that he had done while he was in this incredibly vulnerable state. Now, he's still in an incredibly vulnerable state. He cried. He took a shower. He went to sleep. He barely has time to process any of this, right? He's still reflecting on the trauma that he has endured. He's feeling quite vulnerable. He wakes up the next morning. He gets dressed. The same people that dropped him off in the middle of nowhere, they say, come on, we're taking you over to Hollywood. Okay. He gets in the car. He's still fucking traumatized. Like he's barely even talking. So he's in this vulnerable state and he's taken to an office in Hollywood. And once there, they take him into a conference room. And he was shown to me as having sat nervously down at a conference table. And there was about 5 to 6 different people in the conference room with him at any given time. And more were coming and going. But there was about 5 or 6 sitting at the conference table with him. So he's on one side of the conference table, and the other people were the suits, as I call them, were across from him on the other side of the conference table. Nobody was sitting at the head. They're both sitting at the sides of the table. He's on one side, the suits are on the other side of the table. So he sits down nervously, still in shock by what had transpired 24 hours ago. And he's feeling completely lost. And they keep telling him over and over again how well he had done. And he's just sitting there blinking at them like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Like, they fucking shattered him and they're telling him he did well, like, because he fucking survived. He couldn't reconcile what they were saying with how he felt about the situation. He was told what a bright future he had ahead of himself. So now that they broke him, guess the fuck what? They're building him back up. How nice. And they told him how he had proven himself to be the man that they thought he could be. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on and he's sitting there, still vulnerable, still traumatized, still in shock, sitting there blinking at them while they're telling him how he's everything and beyond. While all of this is going on, men and women kept walking in and out of the room. So imagine this conference room was akin to a hallway. So there would be various different people walking from one door on one side of the conference room, walking past the conference table and exiting a door on the other side of the conference room. So he's watching all of this and they're talking at him and he's kind of hearing the words that they're saying, but he's still feeling like completely lost to himself. And he's watching as all of these people are walking in and out and across and back across the conference room. He has no idea what the fuck is going on. Because if you think about a conference room is not like a hallway. It's not like where people would go from one space to another space. They were treating it like it was like a foyer or something like that, or like it was an entryway to the office that they were in. There's people just going back and forth. So he's watching this again, vulnerable, traumatized, feeling lost and feeling broken. And meanwhile, they keep building him up and telling him all of these amazing things about himself. So he's watching them as they go. And all of the women that were walking across the room, they were wearing tight blouses and pencil skirts and high heels. And some of them had long hair that was flowing. Some of them had it pinned back into a ponytail. Some of them had like, there's a ton of people just coming and going. Some of them had like little bobs. So basically, whatever your type is, they were trying to entice him by having these people walking back and forth in the conference room. And then a girl would come over and she would say, "Can I get you anything?" And she'd kind of bend over so her breasts were visible in the tight blouse that was also like, happened to have been unbuttoned so that you could see the breasts. Smelling good, because that was his weakness. And then there were also men that kept walking back and forth across this conference room as well. And the men were wearing tight pants as well as tight shirts. But their shirts were not necessarily buttoned down. They could have been almost like muscle tees. Some of them were wearing, tight button-down shirts. Some of them were wearing muscle tees, so you could literally see like their muscles, and you could see like their body, and you could see their ass because they're wearing tight pants. So he's watching as all these men and women are coming and going while he's being spoken to about the great man that he is and the bright future that he has ahead of himself, and he has no idea what the fuck is going on. And he can't stop looking at the men. And then some of the men, as they're walking by, they start giving him like a little side glance, you know? As they're walking by, they're looking at him out of the corner of their eye and they're smiling at him. So they're kind of flirting with him. And then one comes over, just like a woman had come over and asked if there was anything that he needed. One of the men had come over to offer him a drink. And then while the guy is standing with him, he's not just standing there talking to him. He's like, he kind of like bends over, right? Like the way that the woman had bent over so he could see their cleavage. The man kind of like bent over and he did like the booty pop. I'm not going to demonstrate what a booty pop is, but the man was bent over and he kind of like he flicked his ass up into the air. And he's leaning in nice and close so Will could smell him as well. And he's like looking at him suggestively, and he takes his hand and he starts touching Will's hand and Will's wrist. Shameless flirting is going on here. And I remind you, all the while, the suits across the table from him are blathering on and on and on about how great he is and what a man he is and what a bright future he has in the industry. But he's not hearing them anymore. Everything they're saying is like background noise because all he is aware of at this point is the man that's standing next to him, offering him a drink while smelling so good and touching him and did the booty pop. And then he goes from barely hearing what they're saying, because what they're saying at this point had become like background noise. But the man, he says, yeah, I'll take something to drink. He doesn't even say what. He's like, okay, I'll take something to drink. So the man stands back up and leaves to get him something to drink. So his point of focus had shifted from the man to what they were saying, which was now no longer background noise, but it was like everything that they were saying was coming into focus slowly, and it was landing and resonating with him. And what they said that he now heard with crystal clarity was, to be a leading man in the industry, you have to take what you want and not ask for it. Take it. They're telling this to him. To be a leading man in the industry, you have to take what you want and not ask for it. Take it. Take it like the man you are. And they're no longer talking like, yeah, dude, you're going to have such a great career. They're like, they're putting like emphasis and oomph into everything that they're saying. Take it, they tell him. Take it like the man you are, because you are a man, and men like you can take what's yours. And the man that was flirting with him comes back into the conference room with his drink, puts it on the table, just as they finish saying, take it like the man you are, because you are a man, and men like you can take what's yours. So the man comes in, he puts the drink on the table. With crystal clarity, the background noise comes into focus and he hears everything that they're saying to him. And suddenly, he shared with me, he feels like a rubber band inside of himself snaps. And all the tension of holding himself back erupts on the man who had just brought his drink into him. And he grabs the man and he just starts kissing him. And he starts tearing at his clothes. And then the next thing, the man is shirtless and the man is kissing him back. So it wasn't one-sided. It wasn't like, I think this man is coming on to me, but I'm not sure. He's going for it. And the man is kissing him back and they're fucking going for it. And meanwhile, Will's mind is barely processing any of this. He's just going for it. He's just taken what they told him to take because he's a fucking man. And he's kissing him. And then he's unbuckling. I'm not going to get too graphic, don't worry. But he's unbuckling his pants, not caring who was there and who was seeing this. Because that rubber band had snapped and Will was suddenly feeling free. This is about as graphic as I'm going to get. He bends the guy over the table and he just goes for it. He just fucking takes him. Because Will is feeling like a caged lion that had in fact been set free. And what does that caged lion do as soon as it's free? It fucking runs. It takes its freedom back. So Will now, after feeling like a caged animal, that he had shut down parts of himself because he thought they were unacceptable or unlovable, they were suddenly now set free. Again, I remind you, he was in a hella fucking vulnerable state. He had just been traumatized. He didn't have any time to process any of it. So he doesn't think, he just does. And when he's finished, he stands there. And suddenly the room that had just moments ago vanished, completely vanished, because it was just him and him feeling free. The room fucking vanishes. It starts to come back into focus. And with the room coming back into focus is the realization of all of these people sitting across him at the table. And he's horrified. He can't believe he just did what he had done. And he's looking across the table at them. He might have been feeling horrified, but none of them were in fact horrified. A few were even smiling and smiling at him. Now this further confounds his complete fucking confusion. Like, what the actual fuck is going on here? And then one of the suits stands up and starts clapping his hands. Like Will had just done the performance of a lifetime. So he starts to put himself back together, right? He puts himself back into his pants. He pulls his pants back up. He closes his fly. He smooths down his shirt. He gives the shirt back to the guy that he had just torn the shirt off of. Will really has no idea what the fuck is going on. So he's putting himself together and he is apologizing nervously. He's first apologizing to the guy. He's apologizing to the people across from the table. His hands are fucking so sweaty and so clammy that he's wiping his sweaty hands on his pants before he thinks he can even pick up the cup and hold the cup without dropping the cup. And he sips his water while the man that had stood up and was clapping now walks across the room to a wall. And he opens up a cabinet, and inside of the cabinet is a TV. And Will is just sitting down, nervously sipping his water, like looking at the people across the table, looking at the guy who's opening up the cabinet, looking at the guy who cleaned himself up and is now like leaving the room. And he has no idea what the fuck is about to happen. His heart is racing 1,000 miles a minute. He's fucking freaking out again. And the guy who stood up and went to the cabinet opens it up, and there's a TV inside, and he turns the TV on. And he presses play on a camcorder. And on the TV, it shows Will exactly what had just gone down. Everything that had just gone down with that guy. And he's watching this in complete horror, and he wants to cross over. You know the expression people say, I was so mortified, I wanted the ground to open up and I wanted it to swallow me whole. So it was like that, but times 1,000. He had never been more horrified. He had never been more terrified of anything in his life. This even surpassed what had happened where he was dropped off in the woods, naked, alone, with no food, shelter, and only water. This surpassed it because he had survived that, and that didn't include anybody else. So he's thinking, fuck, they got this on me. They're going to bring up charges of non-consensual sex with this guy. He's done. He's thinking all these worst case scenarios, how he's done. Not only is his career done, his life is done. His life is fucking over. This was his lowest moment, which had also just followed his highest moment, because he had finally felt that rubber band snap, and everything that he had been suppressing, he finally allowed it free. So that had been like the highest of the highs, and now came the lowest of the lows. So he's sitting at the table after having seen what he had just done, and he puts his head in his hands like this, and he just shakes his head from side to side, and he just can't help thinking he's fucking finished. Not just his career, his life. But then something rather unexpected happens, and the suit that went to the cabinet to press play to share with Will evidence of what he had just done, the suit says, quote, "We aren't in the blackmail business. We're in show business. Welcome to the club, son," end quote. He feels like the breath has been knocked out of him. He picks up his head. He's looking at that guy. That guy is still fucking smiling. Everyone else across the table, they're all fucking smiling. And then papers are slid across the table to him. He had shared with me that he had barely read anything. He just skimmed it, and then he signs. And that was, in fact, when his career really began. He might have had some low-level success before then. But the real success, that was when it had began. Because the road to success and being a very bankable star is not, in fact, an overnight success, but it includes many milestones and step-ups in one career. And the Fresh Prince was only the first step along the way, but it also included him bulking up because he had, in fact, begun to embrace the lion within. Because again, what had happened in the woods, they broke him. What had happened in the conference room, they started building him back up with all of the words that they were saying, telling him, "You're a man. Take what's yours because that's what men do." And then he took what was his, and then he was celebrated for it. And he wasn't going to be blackmailed, and he wasn't going to go to prison. He was celebrated for it. And in the paper that was slid across the table wasn't just the terms and conditions of his entry into the club. It was also all of these other milestones that were going to happen along the way until he was ultimately going to be a leading man worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was because he had taken the first step. So he was again being heavily applauded for what he had just done. That could really fucking mess with somebody's mind, especially on the heels of what he had just encountered like 24 hours ago. Didn't have a chance to process it. Traumatized, vulnerable. He had no fucking idea what was going on still. But he was being applauded? Fucking messed with his head. And all of it had happened so fast. It happened in like a 36-hour time period. He was dropped off in the woods, found his way back, slept, was taken to this conference room. Something further had broken inside of himself. It was like a 36-hour time period. He really didn't have a chance to integrate all of this. And then what happened? Well, he was still reeling from all of this. He met Jada Pinkett Smith. When she was auditioning for a role on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She didn't get the role, but they started dating. And he was still reeling from everything that had happened to him. And he had just met Jada, and they had just started dating. And she was perhaps in the, one could say, love bombing stage of the relationship. So she was really there for him, even if he was not talking about what had happened. But she was there for him, and she has a very grounding energy about her. And he needed to feel grounded after everything he had endured. Now, he also had shared with me that part of the reason he does love her, because he absolutely, even though taking into account everything he had shared at the beginning of the video about how he feels like there's no space for him because it's all Jada, 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 he really does in fact love her. And part of the reason he loves her is because she has a lot of masculine energy. However, she has masculine energy, but she's very safe because she's in a small and petite woman's body. So for Will and what he needed, she was in fact the perfect combination of hard and soft. That, coupled with the fact that she had a very grounding energy on him, when he was still reeling and recovering from everything that had happened to him, he was still a little lost. And this was early on with his newfound status in his career. Plus there was the newfound fame that came with it. Plus the way in which he had come to accept his nature and the unleashed lion within. And how it had basically been celebrated. And it was a lot for him. And Jada's strength grounded him. And he did really come to rely on her. Even if there were times that she couldn't or wouldn't be there for him. Because there were times early on in their relationship when she was off doing her own thing. Or doing her own friends. Doing. Sexually. And it was at those times that he did feel out of sorts. Like he was in this in-between zone. Because he needed her. He needed her sense of strength. He needed her to ground him. He needed her to unpack things with her. He needed her steely resolve. He needed her strength. He just needed her because he was still incredibly lost to himself at that time. He just needed her. Because all the things that he had endured put him into a tailspin. But these were things she could handle. She could handle him. She could ground him. She could get him to stop spinning mentally. She really could. She still can. So he did love her a lot because of it. She was the only one that could really get through to him because of her strength and her resolve. Perfect combination of hard and soft, and that was what he needed. Plus, this really was shaping out to be the best of both worlds because they could be together and they could have their relationship together. But when either of them wanted or needed, they could also be apart and they could have space. So if there was times that Will was feeling he needed more masculine energy and he didn't want this perfect balance, he didn't want to feel safe, he wanted to lose himself again in the way he had lost himself in the conference room, that was fine, because she had her own dalliances on the side. So this was perfect. They could come together when they wanted to be together. But when he needed to go off and do his own thing, that was fine for her. When she needed to go off and do her own thing, it only made sense to him. She's giving me my space, so I gotta grin and bear it, even if at those times he was feeling a little dysregulated and a little ungrounded. He put up with it because it's like, he felt like he hit the jackpot. I got the woman that's gonna love me. I got the woman that could see me. I got the woman that could ground me. I got the woman that could stop me when I start going into a tailspin. I got the woman that I could unpack things with, that I could talk about things with. I could, when I need her sexually, I can have her sexually. When I need the emotional and physical intimacy, we can have it. But then when I need my space, she gives it to me. And all I have to do is give her her space. It was to him a relational jackpot. Okay. So what if she also tended to do her own thing more than him? It was, in fact, a small price for him to pay to have the ultimate relationship. So when her book recently came out in the last year or so, a book called Worthy, when her book came out, he was, in fact, in part blindsided by some of what she had said, because he had felt in the marriage, she did, in fact, have a lot of space to pursue her own pleasure and to pursue her own people and to pursue her own happiness. So she comes out and she's doing the press tour and she's saying, where was I in all of this? And he's thinking to himself, baby, you were right there, having the space to pursue your own things, just like I did. True, he acknowledges when he was on set and he was filming, the child rearing did fall to her. But when he was home, she was a free woman, free to pursue her own pleasures, her own people, her own anything. And when she had also shared that they had been separated, this was equal parts surprise but acceptance to Will. That did not, in fact, blindside him as much as her saying, I forgot the exact terminology that she had used, but she was, again, I'm sharing, like, you can find this on the internet just as I had, right? She was doing the press circuit saying, it's like, where I was losing myself in this relationship. That actually blindsided him more than her saying they were separated. Here's why. They had, in fact, throughout the many years of their marriage, had periods of, quote unquote, being separated. But were these periods that Will would refer to as they were separated, as in, like, when one thinks of a marriage and thinks of the two partners in it being separated, you think of them like they're taking a break from each other. They're taking a cool down period. They're wanting to see how they feel apart. Do they miss the other person? Do they want to come back and get together with the other person? What does their life feel like when they're on their own? It's kind of like a trial separation to see if they want to end the relationship entirely. That's not what their periods of being separated had been about. Yes, they did in fact have periods where they were separated, right? There were the periods where he wanted his space to do his own thing. There was the periods where she wanted her space to do her own thing. So he kind of took that more in stride, like, yeah, we actually were kind of separated, but it kind of wasn't really the way she had presented it to be. But he had an easier time like digesting that. It was more palatable because he could acknowledge they did in fact have periods of being separate from one another. So he was just kind of thinking, okay, maybe my interpretation of how we were separated was different than hers. I saw it as we were having space. Okay, maybe she saw it as separations. But these were not times when he would in fact consider it a formal separation. These were just, according to him, times in which they were doing their own thing. Okay, she just viewed it differently than I do. It's her experience. He wasn't going to argue with that. But again, that kind of actually negates her point about, like, I didn't have space to be my own person. But meanwhile, she's sharing, we were separated for years at that point. And it's like, well, which one is it, honey? Were we together and you felt stifled and you couldn't do your own thing? Or were we separated and you had ample time and space to explore yourself and do your own thing? Now, what was also shown to me is that they were in fact separated or going through one of their periods of I need space. But this was Jada, one of her periods, saying I need space, not where he needed space. This was where Jada was like, honey, baby, I need space right now. So at the time of the Academy Awards, they were in fact going through one of those periods of this so-called separation. And if you were curious, we're getting to it. Will was so much on edge, and that was one of the contributing factors to why he had slapped 3D Police, Matrix Police. I think it was Chris Rock. I could be mistaken. Come at me if you want to. I think it was Chris Rock. I'm going off of my memory. I didn't, in fact, look into that. I don't even remember what year this was. Was it 2023? I think it was last year. Honestly, I have no idea. Again, I don't want the channeled information to be interfered with any of the 3D information. But they were in one of those periods of a so-called separation at that time. So Will was rather on edge because of it. Because this was a Jada saying, I need space kind of a separation. And he wanted everything to be right for Jada. But even early on of the day of the Academy Awards, it was rather apparent that it wasn't. Jada was particularly prickly that day. She was moody. She kept giving him dirty looks. She kept saying snide remarks and snide comments. And he's trying to understand, like, I invited you to share this experience with me. He couldn't understand why she couldn't just, like, pull it together for one fucking day. He did not understand why. And that this was, in fact, her way of making the day that was supposed to be about him, how she was, in fact, able to make this day all about her. And it only got worse as the day went on, and then it reached a crescendo when the show had in fact started. Jada had been acting since they had gotten to the red carpet, and since they were, rubbing shoulders with everybody, and then once they got to their seats, she was acting as the Ice Queen. And all he wanted to do was to get back into her good graces. And then the next thing he knew, Chris had made a comment, Jada had given him a look, and it's almost like he's not taking responsibility. He's not like, I didn't know what happened. I was having an out-of-body experience. He's saying that he just suddenly felt himself like he was drawn. He felt himself on his feet, and that his feet were taking him to the stage. And it was without having any clear idea of what he was going to do when he got there. But all he could kept thinking about and feeling in the back of his mind was the way in which Jada had behaved the entirety of that day. And all he wanted was to make her happy again. So he got to that stage thinking about this without having any clear idea of what he was going to do when he got there. But then he was there and he saw Jada's nasty Ice Queen look flickering in front of his mind. And then his hand went flying. And this was the release that he actually needed to experience. But it was the release he needed from Jada and her energy and her behavior. Because she did, in fact, commandeer this day that he was hoping was going to be about him. And she managed to make this day and his winning his first Academy Award all about her. And he needed some energetic release. Now, please understand, I'm also not condoning it. And I'm not saying his wife was a walking bitch on wheels. He needed a release, so he was in the clear to do it. No. I'm saying that he was feeling rather emotionally tense, rather tapped out. He was in some sort of a tailspin from not understanding why she couldn't be happy for him and how she was managing to commandeer this day. He needed a release, but the release was never going to be directed towards her. It wasn't going to be, Jada, knock it the fuck off. You're acting, nasty to me. He was never going to do that because he had already been so well trained by her, with her feeding into his head and telling him all the time, you only have the success that you have because of me. You only have the career that you have because of me. You were only nominated for this Academy Award because of me. So he could never direct the frustration that he felt towards her. It was always going to either be eating away at him or it was going to be externally directed elsewhere. And in this case, because she had done such a great job of being nasty to him the entirety of the day, the release that he needed was externally directed towards Chris Rock, and it was not directed towards her. And he was so tapped out from a whole day of feeling on edge. He had his own emotions and his own jitters and his own, I think I might be winning an Academy Award today. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I am. He couldn't even enjoy that. He couldn't even be in the experience of it. He couldn't even be in the emotion of it because it was just Jada, 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 and her mood and her bullshit. It was completely commandeering him and overwhelming him. He had no space for himself. And then she gave him that look and he lost it. That's what happened. It was not staged. She has this hold over him. He said it in the earlier part. She knows how to get him because she already has him so completely. And because she was always reminding him, you're only who you are because of me, he never would talk back to her. He felt so grateful for his success, thinking it was tied to her. But here's the crazy thing, guys. His success was actually because he had joined the club. But because he had met Jada so close to the time that he had gone through his ordeal and he had been broken, and she had been there and she had this grounding effect on him, and she was in the early stages of fucking love bombing him and being everything that he needed her to be, he associates all of his success, in fact, to her. Not understanding fully and completely. Yeah, it's not to say that he's completely mentally fractured and he doesn't understand, oh, I'm in some sort of a club and I won an Academy Award today because I'm in it. No. He gets it. But he is tying his success in the industry, in the Hollywood industry, and his success in the club directly to her. So he can't separate. Again, he had shared early on, I remind you, he said it twice. I don't know where I end and where she begins. So he doesn't understand where him and his connection to the club and his connection to his success in the club, he doesn't know where that ends and where she begins because it all is together. It's that soup that you make when all your veggies are going bad and you're like, I'm just going to throw everything I have in there. And hey, while I'm in it, I'll throw some things from the pantry in too. Everything but the kitchen sink, as they say. Because he was so overwhelmed at his ordeal and he didn't have adequate time to process it. And then he exploded and then he was like applauded for it. And then he met Jada and then his career started to rise at the same time. He doesn't know where he ends and she begins. So he's never gonna explode at her because she's the reason he is so successful in his mind. She is the reason he's so successful in the club in his mind. His life orbits around her in his mind. And because she is solely responsible for his success in his mind, and because she's always telling him, baby, I'm the driving force in your career, that's why I can make things about me, he takes it. She is strong and she had been there for him. But she had never, in fact, actually had been there for him, for his sake. But it was for her sake. Because of how him needing her made her feel. And knowing how lost he felt without her. That's why she was really there for him. Because she knew she had power and control over him. And she loves having all that power and control over him. Because she knows just what he needs. And knows exactly how to withdraw it from him to get what she wants and what she needs. Because little lost boys like Will are so easy to read and so easy to control. And that's why she does. And from Jada's point of view, him appearing on her show, whatever it's called, the round table, whatever it is, making him appear on her show, that was all for her as well. And if you've seen clips of it, was that not a broken man appearing on her show while she's doing all of these verbal gymnastics around him to make it seem like, no, it wasn't an affair. It was an entanglement that I had. And I had that entanglement because there were so many years of me feeling unfulfilled and feeling lost. This was, again, her subconsciously reminding him, I was feeling lost during all those years because I was helping you work on your career. And I was getting you your next film role. And I was helping you be the most successful version that you could be. She knows exactly what to say to him to put him into a tailspin. Now, why did she do that, though, you may be wondering? Why was this for her? So it was shown to me that as she was getting older and she started to experience changes that women who are getting older will tend to experience, right? So maybe she was either menopausal or she was premenopausal, and she was feeling like she was losing her feminine power at that time. And there was suddenly a dip in her energy. There was suddenly, from her perspective, a dip in her own feminine prowess. And a dip in her own perceived sense of power. So she had responded by taking a much younger lover to give her a boost and to make her feel young and sexy again. And then thereafter, in the aftermath of it, she made Will, her husband, she made him appear on the show to discuss it. So she could knock him down one of the rungs he was on of his own personal power ladder. It was a cheap shot. She did it so she could knock him down energetically. So from her point of view, by doing so, the power distribution would be a little bit more even between them. Because Will was really at the height of his career. This is a long departure from the skinny little shit he had been when he was filming The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was really hitting his stride and coming into his own. And she could feel his power rising as hers was starting to diminish because she was going through her own internal changes. So she had done it to knock him down so that the power would be more evenly distributed. At least to her it was. But it had in fact devastated and gutted Will. She had completely emasculated him. First by making him appear on the show, and then saying how she was so lost during their years of marriage that somehow in her mind the only logical conclusion was to cheat on him. And then to make him sit there, he was so fucking broken, and to like rub his face in it, like rubbing a dog who shat on your carpet and you're rubbing the dog's face in it. But in this case, you're rubbing a dog who didn't shit on the carpet. It was their other dog that shat on the carpet. You're taking the dog who didn't shit on the carpet and you're rubbing their face into it, because that's literally what she had done. So it was a 1-2 punch, because it was first the lover, and again, they had their own dalliances. So that wasn't necessarily a surprise, but it was taking the lover, which was a friend of their son. It wasn't like an unknown, unnamed person that he knows she's off doing her thing with. It was someone he knew. It was someone that had been in the home. It was someone that he had come to have some sort of a relationship with. Not like a sexual or romantic relationship. He knew this person. So it was like an insult. It's not some unnamed person I don't want to know about, but I know she's off doing her thing. He knew this person. So it was taking the younger lover, somebody that he knew, and then rubbing his face in it in her show. So she didn't, in fact, redistribute the power dynamic. She destroyed the power dynamic by destroying him. And then, after that, he did well and true want to have his own space, so he could lick his wounds and he could recover from what she had done to him. He wanted his space from her. But no matter how much space he wanted and needed from her, he still needed her. And then he was nominated for the Academy Award, and they were separated at that time. And she was making the day all about her, and we know how that day went. Because the older Jada becomes, and the more her youth fades, the more one can see her for who and what she truly is. She's the Black Widow spider in the corner, eyeing her prize, mapping it out, mating with a man, and then killing him, if only doing it energetically. But he still loves her, and he still needs her, because he has tied up too much of himself fundamentally into her. He doesn't know where he ends and she begins. And he is deathly afraid. If she leaves, she's taking fundamental parts of him with her. And that's why he won't leave her. And she's not going to leave him either. Because he's given her a hella nice life as well. I think I had read somewhere their house is so big, it has its own zip code. And she'll remind him every time he starts to get too feisty that his success is because of her. And because he was so lost at the time that he joined the club, and it happened to have been concurrent with the time that he met her, he believes her. So that's why I chose to do the energy read on this relationship first. So you could get a taste and understanding what the dynamic is. And even though it might sound unhealthy, and even though it is a codependent relationship, in understanding why he's never going to leave her, because he had gone through his own ordeal and then he met her, and she was a salve to soothe his soul. And he doesn't know where he ends and she begins. And he doesn't know where his success begins and she begins and he ends and he begins. It's everything but the fucking kitchen sink soup. So that is the reading that I have for you on Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you have found it to be insightful, maybe even thought-provoking. And I encourage you to please take what resonates and to leave the rest behind. And until next time, to stay in the high vibration.